Quite a few people have asked me, how was I able to buy a distressed business, an accountancy and bookkeeping firm that had made losses the previous 2 years of cumulative losses of 650k and was in administration? How was I able to buy that, turn it around in 18 months into a profitable business and get a 400% return on my original investment? Well, this series of videos will go into not necessarily what we did right, but what we got wrong, because I think that's where the greatest learnings are. Hope you enjoyed the videos. So the third lesson that we learnt was all to do with customer service. Now, I've had several successful startup businesses, and when you start something from scratch, you can get the basics in first, and they're particularly if you're a one-man band like I've been on a number of occasions, you get things right from the off. Where you buy a business, you're inheriting someone else's business and someone else's, sometimes things that they've not done, forgotten to do, didn't get round to doing. So this was our first exposure in buying a business. Now, with customer service, we had assumed, because that's been my experience in the last 40 years, that the vast majority of clients are in various degrees of happiness with your service, certainly happy enough to stay with you. We had learnt with this business, discovered quite a few months into it, that a large proportion, a third initially, but that grew over a period of time and peaked. A third of clients were not happy. And of course, unhappy clients, if those problems don't get resolved, they go. It's a free market. And so when we dug into this, because we're going around and asking clients how happy, started with a survey really, basically asking how happy or otherwise were they. And on those results, we did a number of things. One, we appointed a customer service manager. In 20 years of trading, the business has never had someone who was responsible for customer service. So we introduced that. Because what was happening before that was that people were blaming each other within the company. There was a blame culture. No one was taking responsibility for making a mistake. Honest mistakes most of the time, the vast majority of the time, in fact, but still mistakes and still affecting the perception of what the client was thinking about the business. And that'd been going on years, long before we bought it. There was also, and this is a big thing for me, there were no service level agreements, no SLAs contained in the client contracts. So lots of other detail. It was a really exhaustive contract, but no mention of SLAs in terms of the deliverables. So that's something that we vowed that we would change. So we devised a complaints policy, so everyone knew what they needed to do when they had some grumblings or a client unhappiness reached the surface. There was a proper structure, and also someone who was responsible for addressing those drops in customer service. Also, my business partner, Paul, had to go around to every client and wanted to go around to every client to talk about enhancements in service, whether or not they were okay with the service or not we were delivering. It was always about enhancements. It was taking it where it is now to where we want to be. And then obviously dealing with sticky issues where there was a client that had a problem. Then we had to resolve that to their satisfaction and get to the bottom of it, which wasn't easy sometimes. So that's about a year's work, would you believe? Unpicking unhappiness that was already there before we bought the business. And so what would we do going forward if the next business we purchase? Certainly one thing that we would do is within the first month as the new owners is get around and see individually and personally every client. Three key things to talk about. One is about our future. Well, obviously the introduction, getting to know and building a rapport, essential. Secondly, talk about our future plans for the business, onwards and upwards. We'd also talk about service enhancement, things that we wanted to introduce that hopefully would be viewed as a benefit by the client. And then tackle the thorny subject in person, see the white of their eyes, price increases, if needed, if appropriate. And also have the opportunity to explain why, do it in person rather than receiving an email. So those are the various things we'd do differently in the next purchase. It does mean you'd have to, particularly if there's a lot of clients, you have to get your skates on. So maybe Zoom would help. But certainly with the larger clients, I think that they deserve an in-person meeting ASAP, and hopefully within the first month. Okay, so the next learning that we had was to do with technology in business. And I'm not talking about quantum physics, I'm talking about basic technology platforms to assist staff's efficiencies and also improve customer service at the front end. Now, this accountancy and bookkeeping firm had not invested, the previous owner had not invested in systems and processes and using technology that we've all taken for granted in the 21st century. It was very much a business that was in the analog world rather than one that was embracing technology. And one of the outcomes of this is that the bookkeeping side was using a variety of platforms, not one for 40 clients, a variety, and each of them had their nuances. And that was a real problem because staff had to get their head round not one accountancy package, but half a dozen. And of course that rarely happened. And so you got people that knew one platform and didn't know the other, and yet we were delivering supposedly the same service to customers. So that was an issue. So we made the decision that we would switch all of the platforms across, transition all the clients to Xero, industry-wide, industry acknowledged, straightforward, very popular bookkeeping software package. Now that's easier said than done because obviously transitioning does take some time, but we found we had a lot of resistance from a number of the staff actually who were reluctant to change. Some embraced it, some were good, but it became quite a battle really, getting some members of staff to get on with it. And despite having support from us as owners, and we eventually did get there, but it probably took 8 months to transition, which is a ridiculously long period of time. Of course, one of the things that we unearthed in this sort of transition for clients is all in the aid of having things more simplistic, making the working environment more efficient for staff, and also delivering an enhanced customer service. But we did find that not all staff were up with modern technology. In fact, we had one member of staff that turned around to me and said, look, I hadn't really got on with Word and especially Excel. This is a bookkeeper, qualified bookkeeper supposedly, in 16 years of employment at that company, hadn't really got to grips with Excel and was paper-based, analog-based. So these things you only find out when you get into the nitty-gritty and the detail when you own a business. But I guess the criticism that I'd have of ourselves as owners is we should have gone on with it from day one. We'd waited 6 months just to see whether the current setup was actually better, whether it was going to be worth the hassle, the upset, the extra work and time involved to switch everyone to Xero. We should have had the courage of our convictions and done it from day one, not waited 6 months for us to live with a problem that was never ending. So yeah, so that was the learning, key learning. If you believe it to be right, just get on with it, do it, go with your gut feel. You're the business owner, you're the experienced person commercially, and you can weigh up the pros and cons. And then once you've decided what you're going to do, just go for it. Be focused, be determined, and don't be swayed. But do listen to other people, but don't be swayed if you believe it's right. Well, hopefully you found that latest tip helpful, and watch out for the next one to follow.